With that, want to welcome everybody. We do want to recognize that we do have Councilmember Saxton with us, Councilmember Wilson, Councilmember Paul, and Councilmember Jackson. This is the Roy City Council meeting, July 6, 2021, at 5:30 p.m. We're actually residing in the council chambers. We are excusing Councilmember Burrell. She's not with us tonight. We'd like to start our meeting with a moment of silence, and Councilmember Jackson has indicated she'd like to lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hey, would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. You please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Council, we do have some consent items, specifically the approval of the 28th, 2021 Roy City Work Session meeting minutes and the June 1st, 2021 Roy City Council meeting minutes and work session meeting minutes. And we also have the reappointment of the planning commissioners. I think you've seen a packet on that. Any comments or questions, Council, about these particular consent items? Anything you'd like to know or like to ask? Okay. With that, then, do I have a motion then to approve the consent items as provided?
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
perfect. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, perfect. This is public comment period. If you have something you'd like to share, please step up to the mic. Just give us your name and address. Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West.
Perfect.
In Roy. Just a couple of comments related to the discussion about the land use. As far as elevations of the buildings, one thing I would suggest is that we take the height of the buildings based on finished grade, and also include an original baseline, which I think was discussed as well, from the USGS survey. There is a large building being built over in Syracuse that is a temple for the LDS Church. And in order to stay above the water table and meet the requirements of the building, they built the surface of that building lot 25, 30 feet up in the air. So if we say we want you to have a 40 or 50 foot building, but somebody raises the land by 20 feet, all of a sudden we have a 60-foot building. Right. So we might want to incorporate reference to the original USGS survey elevation of the building site so that water table doesn't require that we build up higher and then we get a taller building. As far as, there was a little bit of a discussion about should we specify how many floors of a building or should we specify height? I would encourage you to reference the height of the building and not necessarily the floors. The floors can be anywhere from 10 to 12 or 13 feet per floor. Let's let the developers figure that out and then bring a proposal to the city. Last item, you're going to have a little bit of a discussion about the American Rescue Plan. $1.9 trillion from a federal budget that already has a $29 trillion deficit. I would not like to see this city participate in increasing that federal debt anymore. Don't use any of the money from that rescue plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else like to share a thought? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go out of public comment period. Thank you for the input. That was good. Action items. We do have one action item, Resolution 21-17, approving the ambulance transportation rates and charges. Chief, I believe you're talking to this one, right?
I am
Thank you.
doing that, yes, sir. Tonight, first, it's good to be back. This is my first resolution actually in this chamber, so it's actually pretty cool in that way for that person, so pretty exciting. But this resolution, as you've seen, we also had some changes. City attorney and myself had some changes, both on the numbers were flipped as well as some wording that needed to be done, that you were given the notes for changes and have those in front of you for tonight's resolution. So I'll just go ahead and read it through and ask for your approval. So whereas the Utah Department of Health Bureau of Emergency Medical Services sets the rates which may be charged by service providers in the state, and whereas the Roy Fire and Rescue Department provides the services set by the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services, and whereas Fire and Rescue Chief Craig Golden recommends that the City Council approve the following fee amounts in accordance with the rates set by the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services to help offset some of the costs for providing these emergency medical services. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Roy City Council that the following rates for emergency medical services become effective July 1st, 2021. And the rates that you have there in front of you are the current rate as of June 30th, and the rate that should go effective as of July 1st, and the increase off to the right. The one difference I want to point out is the ambulance ground ambulance licensed EMT intermediate or advanced service that was there. If you were licensed to that before 2016, you were allowed to charge this rate, a higher rate. And basically was an oversight on our part. It was identified in this particular rate change, identified it was not something that wasn't being done in Roy City that will be as of July 1st. So those rate increases will come back to the city for that rate identified from this point forward. So, and the mileage rate only went up a small amount comparable, but it has that rate there below. So with that being said, I'd recommend that this resolution gets approved by the council today.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Council, comments, questions before we go for a vote?
I'm just glad you caught that.
Yeah, me too.
Just to clarify, really, we have no say in the rates because it all is mandated and dictated by the state, right?
That's correct, and it follows the Medicare guidelines on the federal, so it matches up to those rates as well, and we just follow suit, correct?
Yeah. Okay, other thoughts?
Bigger question, how you doing, Chief?
Feeling good, sir. Thank you.
Good. Glad to have you up and moving.
Getting fixed one piece at a time.
Okay.
That's how Johnny Cash built his car.
Okay, with that then, I'll indicate, is there a motion to approve Resolution 21-17, which deals with the ambulance transportation rates and charges?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, so we have Ann and Diane. So sorry, I just want to make sure I get this for the record. So we have a motion true by Diane, and we have a second by Ann. This is a roll call vote. Morgan?
Councilmember Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Saxton,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, it is approved. Thanks, Chief, appreciate the input. We have just a couple of discussion items. I think I sent you just a little worksheet that talks about the first one. This deals with the conversation we had in our last meeting that talks about the Ogden Technology College Scholarship. What they would like is they'd like the Roy City Council to select someone and submit their names to this college so that they would get up to a $1,000 scholarship to attend their classes. I think the worksheet that I sent you basically talked to, I apologize, I have it here, I just have to find it, that talks to the issue, yeah, there it is, thank you, that talks to the issue about just some ideas on types of scholarships you might want to consider. You can talk about an essay scholarship, a writing scholarship. It can be academic scholarship. There's just a variety of different types of scholarship options that you can do it. You can do it on scholarship dealing with just how they do in contributions, what they do in terms of community involvement. Just want to get a little conversation so that so the city staff can go ahead and start putting some things in motion. The criticality of this conversation really is this. We not only have to make a decision, council, but we also have to basically put it out there to the public. So those who qualify have time to submit. If it's going to be an essay, for an example, they get time to write a good essay to be reviewed. If it's going to be based on academics or other means, that we have means by which they can collect all that. We got to do the advertisement. Then there has to be the selection process. And then from the selection process, we got to give that name, okay, to the college. And so it's going to take time, at least a few months, to work through this, and we just want to get your ideas of how to proceed. So with that, any thoughts?
So I have one question is, so after we choose the individual, they can select whatever category that they want to and use the money for that.
Unless you basically want to define it, yeah, it's their choice. And as you've seen on this piece of paper I provided, I listed all of the different classes
Yeah, that's what I'm
that
looking
are
at.
involved. And they can pick any one of those classes that that the colleges, in fact, that they have. And that really was the intent, is to let them choose.
Okay.
Now, to me, to be very honest with you, Ross, I'll just make this comment. Maybe it would be a nice idea if, in fact, they completed the right course, something that the college provides, and who knows, maybe they can come work for Roy City when they're done. Why not? I mean, if you're willing to make that part of the plan, then why not make a plan? But give us some ideas what you're thinking. How would you like to see this scholarship to be issued?
Is there an age limit on this? Or could it be for mothers that want to go back to college, or
Above 18 and above.
it's just over the age of 18?
I think that a combination would be nice. I think that if we can allow an opportunity for a wider purview of Roy citizens,
Okay.
but still also do it by merit.
Yeah,
And-
I like that idea too, because I mean, just looking at me for an example, I'd be one that would come out in automotive, but I'm not going to write an essay. I could tell you how to rebuild an engine and probably win the competition as I did in high school, but I'm not doing it by writing an essay. So it's defining, that's a tough one where you have so many options, is defining what the outcome is.
Maybe
Whether
a
it's off of
combination.
talent or,
Academic and community service, because I think one of the things we're trying to promote is increasing the connection and service with Roy, and when people do that. And then that's the other thing, is if we did include service, what type of service? And I think it should be Roy Community Service, but
And how do we get the information out to everybody that we have this scholarship?
Well, once we decide the approach, and Morgan can help us in terms of using the different mediums, whether the magazine, the Roy City websites, the social media mediums, I would ask you do it as well as council, because it's your scholarship. My recommendation is we'll push as hard and as fast as we can to get the word out, and then give them ample time to prepare their application package.
well, and could you piggyback on like business advisory? You know, there's a group in there that does very well on social media and promoting stuff. You know, they're an advisory board of the council, so you could use them as well.
Any means that we can to get the message out, we'll do that, just so that the people have an opportunity to hear the story, understand what's expected, and have time to develop and submit.
Well, and the thing I like about using the business, it's our scholarship as a council, but using them too is trying to develop something that comes back and gets used in Roy.
Hence my comment to Ross.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be more specific, but
Whether it's the city or a business inside of Roy.
exactly. But
Or a service provided inside of Roy.
yeah, obviously that would be something. But yeah, kind of get a framing of how you'd like to see this. What kind of scholarship would you like to see? And if you keep it pretty generic, meaning is academic, merit-based with community service, and you says that's as close as we can get to it, then let's, Matt and I sit down and we'll kind of create then some options and present that back to you for final approval. What are you thinking?
I like that combination.
Okay, academic, merit, and community service?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Right.
You okay
Yep.
with that?
Yep.
Brian, you okay? Okay, Matt, you and I will take an action. We'll kind of frame up something along those same lines. Last comment so we understand, how would you like that documentation brought back to you? It's kind of a,
Application form, you mean? Just
it can be an
have
application form, it can be a little bit of an essay, it can be where they talk a little bit of the story. I mean, obviously, when you start talking about community service scholarship in Roy, they've got to say something about how they provided community service. So somewhere in that has to be some writing. How would you
So
like
kind
this
of
to be
like an
brought?
application, but then have them write, like, at the bottom of the application, you know, why they deserve this and what they would use it for?
Okay, so not just the definition of that, but maybe a little bit more specific of how personal that would be for them?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, what they would use it for.
Carl, but and this is gonna sound funny coming from me, but I think that we should, if we're really gonna get the most deserving, I think we should veer away from essays. And the reason why is because there are some people that can sit down and write an incredible essay, but can they go out and actually do the hands-on work? And so that would be, you're thinking, wait a minute, that's all you did for 30 years, Brian, was write essays. But I think it would broaden the scope of audience that you want to reach with the application.
Well, I think that's what we talked about is application and merit, you know,
I'm fine with bullet points.
discuss, yeah.
Would we narrow it down to finalists and then individually interview them?
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Because anybody can have their parent write an essay for them. That's what my kids used to do, so I'm just saying.
Did you just incriminate yourself?
I just think
Can we scratch
I
that from
would
the
personally
recording?
like to talk to them, you know, and get a genuine feel of their
Well, that's what I said.
sincerity and
I
their-
mean, I can't put it in writing, but I can stand up in front of a group and
Right.
tell you what's on my mind.
Would you want it final 3 or final 5?
Well, I guess we'd see how many applied first. There's
Okay.
only 5 that apply, then,
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
vet through the applications as a council and then bring back the top 3 to interview, or top 5, whatever.
whatever, yeah, depending on how many,
Just like if we were hiring somebody for a job.
yeah.
Okay,
Works for me.
we'll go ahead and take an action to kind of focus this then based on your input. And then I got to make sure, academic, merit, and community service. And then we'll frame this up, come back with you, and we'll get a final from you. Fair enough? Everybody okay with that? Okay, that's our direction. Thanks. Next one. This one deals with Kevin's favorite topic, potential use of American Rescue Plan funding. Council, I sent you some information. You need to understand, the Treasury Department basically has earmarked $4.6 million of the whatever $1 trillion was there, the $4.6 million was going to come to Roy. It's going to come in 2 segments, $2.3 million each segment. And we believe the first segment will be coming shortly, and the second segment will come a year from then.
So I have a question based off Mr. Homer's comments, and I don't know if we know this or not. If we choose not to take the money, where does it go?
Go to somebody else.
Yeah, it's reallocated.
It's reallocated. You can actually designate it. The policy, help me.
The
Matt.
one way or another, it's going to get spent. It's not going back to the federal coffers.
No, because there's water districts, there's sewer districts, there's a variety of places. You can send it back to the legislators. You have to send it back. The Treasury's position would be is you own it. Okay? It's not a debate, Council. You own it. You don't have to spend it, which means you can redirect it. And there's a provision within the law that allows you then to simply says, I'm going to redirect it, send it back to the legislators, let them spend it, send it to a water district, send it to a sewer district. You can redirect it, a school district, you can redirect it, but you have to be held accountable to it,
To the deficit or something like that.
to the owning of it. So it'll go into the books, it'll be counted as being income, $2.3 million, Camille, first slot, and then you have to go through the appropriate process to redirect it. So her log or whatever you do will have to show that to be reallocated. We did that with the CARES Act money when you sent a little over $1 million to Weber County, and Weber County spend it for you. Okay?
So,
It's the same process.
so I saw, it looks like we have sewer potential, we have drinking water's a potential.
Broadband.
Broadband, which I think that's been a hot topic of discussion in our city. But are we limited to those three with it? Because we've received a lot of comments and stuff, and we're dealing with public safety. We need more public safety. We
Yeah, could we
need
use
to
it to
beef up
hire
our
another
public
police
safety.
officer?
But it's a
Well-
one-time funding, so we have to be careful about long-term
Yeah, because then you got to figure out a way to back it up for the perpetual ongoing.
You can use it for COVID response.
Right.
And for employee wages, but as suggested, one-time funding, if you hire a new employee, they strongly discourage anything ongoing, even from them.
Right.
So we couldn't put it away in a police account and then just pay his wages out of that?
Until 2024, then it has to be done.
Yeah, there's a
I
limit.
mean, can we buy another ambulance with it and free up some of the city money?
There's possibilities of that. One of the issues that we're having right now is we're going to be a subrecipient of the state, so the state can come out with new requirements that we would have to abide by. Some of us went to a conference this last Monday, and some of the requirements right now are pretty vague. They
Right.
say they don't want you to spend it on O&M, operation and maintenance.
Right.
And so when they say that, does that mean that you can't replace a water line? To me, yeah. So where are we going to put a water line that we don't already have? Some of
Yeah, we
those
don't have a
things-
lot of new construction going on.
Yeah, but there, we could potentially, we want a water tank on 4,000 South someday. So maybe that's a possibility or something else, you know, throughout the city that we can become creative with, but those requirements really aren't out yet. Some of the requirements from the state or from the federal government are out, but they're very vague.
Well, it looks like UCLT's on board with helping us too. I read what the mayor provided, that they're willing to help us out.
In lots more ways than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, broadband has been a big topic of discussion in the community. You know, we've talked about it as the council, but then I was thinking thinking of different things that we just approved in the budget that maybe we could fund out of this to free up
free up
some of the
money.
city.
Like
That's
$700,000
potential, yes.
fire truck? Could use it for that?
If we could use it
Yeah.
on something else and then free up money to buy,
Right.
there's some of that maybe, I can't answer for sure, but like I said, things are kind of vague and we want to make sure we do it right.
Oh, yeah.
And we do have a little bit of time. One of the pressing issues that the mayor did send out is there's a potential of matching funds from the state. If you join with other jurisdictions, there's a higher possibility of that. But the state has $50 million too, that we could match what we're putting into like some potential project,
Like a
infrastructure.
Sewer project
Sewer
or something.
project, correct.
Or could you put it into parks, like if we want to do more pickleball courts, or is
That
that
would be,
something?
I didn't read that anywhere in the
yeah,
law.
I've never.
Or
yeah.
could you partner with Roy Conservancy to beef up our irrigation program or something?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And match that with the state. Now, when we talk to the state about the parameters of the grant, they don't have those parameters out yet.
When
So
will
they're
they
just
have
saying,
those? Any idea?
On the water.
To my knowledge, they didn't really give us a timeline. They just said, we're hoping to get something by fall.
And they want
the
you to
timeline.
spend this on a hope.
I'll be
How the
honest, it's a
government
lot
works.
better than the CARES Act. The CARES Act was a lot stronger timeline than we have now. Right now, it's 2024, so we do have a couple of years that we can spend it. But if we want to take advantage of some type of grant matching programs with the state, we might have to be a little bit quicker.
Police cars, ladder truck.
In regards
I
to
don't
Ms.
know if they would, it's more on infrastructure of where they're looking.
Yeah, so there's no confusion.
Sorry,
the-
Chief.
The process really is, and you got to read the law, because, to be honest with you, Andy, it's a little vague to me because the law is really interesting. The intent would be is that it has to be directed to a specific area, but if the specific area you've already approved a budget to go ahead and do something else, some money with that project, and you supplement that with this, what do you do with the money that you didn't use? And then I think to Matt's point would be is, well, that extra money that you didn't use may be directed to something else outside of this policy. We just have to be careful. But let me read, if I can, the infrastructure. It says, with respect to wastewater infrastructure, recipients may use this funding to construct publicly owned treatment infrastructure, manage and treat stormwaters, ROS, and subsurface drainage water, facilitate water reuse, and secure publicly owned treatment works, among other uses. And then they reference some very specific areas that the state has under federal allocation, because they get federal funding under what's called the CWSRF and the DWFRF, one dealing with water, one dealing with sewer. And if the policy in those allows certain things, then you can use the money for those same things. So here's the key. The key really is that, do you want the city to fundamentally first move forward with this? And you need help with that answer, because as I stated, and Matt stated, the fact is we can simply reject it. There's a provision within the law that says we don't want it, we'll redirect it to someone else, and all we have to do is be accountable for it to show it went on the books, and then we transferred that to some other institution, government, that will take it and use it for whatever they want.
And in clarification for that, so like Mr. Homer's concern, which I think of all of ours, is that the deficit is increasing, exponentially. If we were to redirect it, could it be redirected to something that has to be purchased, or could it be redirected to a deficit fulfillment in something?
Well, they made specifically, it says, restrictions. You cannot use it for direct deposit on pensions. You can't use it for rainy day accounts. You can't use it for debt services or payments. You can't use it for settlement payments. And you can't use it as federal grant matchings. Those are out of the policy. So,
But if we redirect it, can we dictate, or, yeah, that's probably the wrong
no,
word.
if you give it to the sewer district, they'll spend it. It's theirs to spend.
But we've got to give it to somebody. So I think where Diane's headed, can you give it back to reduce the deficit somewhere?
No.
Yeah.
The Treasury doesn't take the money back. The law says you take it. I promise you, if Roy City chooses not to take it, there will at
Somebody
least
else will
be
spend it.
274 other cities that will take it. All you have to do is choose one.
Pick me, I'm next.
Not that I like the outcome. I'm just
No.
telling you the reality.
So here's a thought, because it's, broadband's been a big topic, but the other big topic that we seem to talk about tonight is cemetery. Well, at the entrance of where we're thinking a cemetery, we have a big, not so pretty retention basin. Could that money be used to redevelop that retention basin and the entrance to that retention basin that would help provide a way for the entrance to our cemetery?
To the question, it has to fall within the stormwater criterion, and that is a stormwater retention basin.
That's why I was thinking that.
So again, if your thought process would be is, first, let's go ahead and say that Roy City is going to take the $4.6 million, then the question would be is, do you want this to basically be looked at both in terms of providing some, and I say some, will be used in terms of compensating the public safety personnel's salaries, which was what we did with CARES Act. It allows within the law that says if they were involved with public safety during the pandemic, then they can, in fact, have part of their salaries be able to be compensated, which would free up some money. And do you want them to also consider the city to look at infrastructure, meaning is sewer, broadband, water, which is the infrastructure. A lot of what's in the law we don't qualify for, simply put. I can read it to you. I pulled the big ones out, but eligibility for public health says used under this category must be in response to the disease itself or the harmful consequences of the economic disruption. So we didn't deal with the disease in terms of fighting it with vaccines and stuff. We dealt with the people getting them to the people who dealt with that, which there's a component in this that deals with the public safety response.
Maybe the cemetery would work, because that kind of deals with the response of the COVID.
Yeah, it's a response element.
Yeah, people die
No,
from it.
I understand, and there's provisions in
It's a
here
tough
that
way to
says-
look at it, but it's the true reality.
And there are provisions within this policy that says if you want to compensate the people in Roy who passed away as a result of it, you can do that as well. Although the president did sign another bill that basically says under the, trying to think of what that other one was, this one dealt with when they have national disasters, that everybody who in fact, families that in fact had a loved one passed wasn't in fact going to get compensated for burial expenses. And that's in the law, and that was passed as well. That's another component to this we haven't talked about, but it's not our component. So here's what I'm asking you. Do you want us to look at basically compensation for employees who are directly impacted, providing public health services to these people? There will be officers and there will be paramedics involved. Do you want us to look at infrastructure as a potential opportunity for this? Do you want us to give it away?
No.
No.
What would you
Not
like
if
us
someone
to
else
do?
is just gonna spend it.
I think what you just talked about, other than to give it away, all makes sense.
Right.
Okay, so public safety component to this
So
and
talk ab-
infrastructure?
Talk about the public safety component.
And
because that would be
broadband.
a temporary,
Broadband.
that'd be just a temporary one-time bonus sort of a thing, I
No.
guess is.
It can be, but it didn't say bonuses in this one. The CARES Act specifically said bonuses. But what it says is if Chief, if you had people who were responding to paramedic services and they were transporting people, okay, which they did, to send them to the hospital, okay, or some health provider, then in fact is their salaries, Matt, Camille, I believe their salaries are directly proportional to providing that service to the COVID epidemic.
So it's retroactive,
That's what the last one was.
and so this would be in addition to what was already done? So we just pile that on, or how would we know?
I think what you would have to do to justify it, in my opinion, I'm surely not an auditor, and Camille, you'd have to assess this, but there was a cutoff date when we in fact provided that service, and that was shut off. Anything from that cutoff date further moving towards now, I think may qualify under that. Again, we got to get the details, but I think that makes sense. I don't think we can backdate it to the beginning of the pandemic, and we've already been compensated for that under the CARES Act. That would be, in my opinion, misappropriation of funds. But for the time that we took accounting for the time that the public safety provided that service until now, I think I think that probably would justify under this current allocation.
If it's not a bonus, what would it be considered then? Because it's a one-time payment of sorts, right?
It's a salary compensation. So what
Okay.
it would mean is, and I'll try to define this as best I can, but Camille, you and Matt understand this better than I. But my understanding would be is if the city paid the salaries of those public safety people who are providing responses, and we took that out of the general fund, which is what we did, then they could basically take the money that normally would have been paid for those services, take that out, in essence, not pay for the salaries, and use this rescue fund to pay that salary. That would free up that money that was normally would have been spent for salaries, and then use that for something else. The something else would not be affiliated with this. It would simply be additional funds in the general fund. Is that a fair way of stating that?
Well, you could use it for a wage increase too, but it's a one-time.
One time.
The problem is figuring out the ongoing, and so.
That's a fair way of saying it, but we would just want to make sure that by doing that, it's okay with the state and the
With the
federal
state
government
policy, right.
before we react.
Well, I think trying to balance between public safety, potential infrastructure, which at the cemetery would be a great place to think about that, and then broadband. If we can beef up our broadband or, potentially utilize it to help bring in fiber.
Okay. So let me summarize. Keep the money. Focus on how we can we'll look at the compensation for salaries that were involved directly with the pandemic, and then the infrastructure. 3 components: water, sewer, broadband. And we come back with some strategy to the council on that. You okay with all that?
Sold.
You okay? Diane, you okay with that?
I guess so. Our hands are being twisted. I'm not sure that accepting the money is the right thing to do, but
I'm not
yeah, it's a
saying-
difficult situation.
It is.
Yeah, I guess if every city and every county in the United States basically said no and sent the check back to the Treasury Department, I can't help but think the president might be a little upset because this is his, but I will indicate to you, it would be an incredible event.
Wouldn't that be a
would be.
neat statement? That would be a phenomenal statement. I mean, the debt that's being created for our posterity is appalling.
But I will say to you, in light of the fact that the city has been designated and we cannot return it directly back to the Treasury, I can't speak for Ross, but I will tell you as a city council meeting, Ross, I was very specific when one council member turned to me, and you were in that meeting, and told me that Roy City has an $80 million infrastructure bill that is coming. Let me repeat that. $80 million bill. And when you talk about a budget that we're running right around, 29 million, 37 million total
It's 2.5 times our budget.
of everything in our budget. And that's what Ross and his team have to deal with in terms of trying to find a solution in terms of making sure our infrastructure is adequate to meet the needs of the people. Now, luckily, and I'll get off my box with this, luckily he's staggering that over years, and it's the only choice he has to be able to get that challenge.
Well, the last time we went to Washington, D.C., I mean, that was one of the big topics they discussed was infrastructure and trying to figure out ways to help cities and municipalities with infrastructure. And so this may not be directly what they had in mind, but for us, it is a good opportunity for us to take advantage of beefing up our infrastructure.
Versus the option would be is that we have to bond, or the option would be is you raise taxes. Because somehow that has to be paid, and that infrastructure has to be done. Comment, Ross?
3 big things coming up in the next few years. We got 5,600, we need new water line in.
Yep.
1,900, when they do that, and 3,500.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be under concrete.
You got to speak louder.
And what Ross said, he says we have 3 big projects coming dealing with water. He's basically saying is we have the water infrastructure under 5,600 when UDOT basically opens that street. We basically have a project on 1,900, and we have a big one on 3,500. All of that has to be done, and the city owns that infrastructure, which means we have to pay for it. So these are realities, and again, I know how some of you feel like me. We're not big advocates of tax increase. And so the question is going to be is that do we direct some of the funding to help us offset, what the city is going to need? And Ross will stand and tell you we have to deal with these issues. It's either that or
Not
we
a
get a
time
break.
limit on how soon we have to spend it, is there?
You have to have the money obligated by 2024. That's what the law
So
says.
we'll be doing those projects by then.
Definitely 5,600 and
So-
some of 1,900 by then. So we'll come back with some answers if you're okay with this conversation so far.
Right.
And maybe an idea of what the cost of different things would be,
They have to be.
proposal.
Yeah.
So we have an idea of, where that fits in.
Yeah, we can surely break that
Well,
down.
and
bring that
I'm
to you.
sure those of you that's watching the news, the interesting thing is cities have reversed course at a fast rate of speed on police funding. You had cities that were backing out police funding, and then all of a sudden they're proposing a 30% increase. The
what's
problem is you're in a perfect storm of a bidding war.
Yep.
Because every city is starting, the bigger cities are starting to raise wages for the public, and it won't be long before the fire department's there. They're probably there, you're just not hearing about it. But as they get into a bidding war, we're gonna be the ones that's left holding the bag because we'll be the lowest wage again. And at what point do we have to redo our whole structure because of that?
I will indicate to you that's a real possibility, and I can't help to think that both Matt and the chiefs right now are as concerned as everybody around this table is that's happening and is happening now. And
Some
my
big
biggest,
increases in the big cities, Ogden,
and Salt Lake,
Salt Lake.
big increases.
That's where our officers will gravitate to if they're paying the big bucks.
30% increase in Salt Lake is a big boast. That's a big bump. Those are issues we have to face,
Well,
and we got to
and-
step up.
You know, we approve the wage salary survey, but it's public safety, or not public safety. It is there, but we're dealing in it in a lot of different aspects because, you know, right now construction's rampant. Ross is losing people to construction companies.
Yes, everything you're saying. So we'll come back with you with a couple solutions. Let's get your ideas of where we proceed, but it's coming. And if we're going to be able to look for matching funds, the state does have $50 million in matching funds, then if we want to basically tie the matching funds to this, then we have to have a package to be able to do that.
And that 50 million is divided among the different cities of the state?
Yeah, in fact, every city in the state. And remember, you've got 200 and some odd, I think 270 cities in Utah. And so when you look at that, there's a lot of people. And I promise you, the bigger cities right now have already started putting their plans in motion of how they want to get part of that 50 million. So it is what it is. But I think if there's and they're saying, and we heard from the discussion, if Roy City was teaming with another city, those collaborations between cities are very powerful in terms of getting our projects approved. But we have to have some type of collaboration if we can think this thing through full enough. Luckily, the group that's making that decision out of the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, I got to get those offices right, have not developed the selection format yet, but they're in the process of doing that.
Well, we need to get ahead of it because
Exactly.
we'll get swallowed up by the big cities because they have the resources to jump right on it.
Exactly.
What's the time frame for submitting the application for that?
And that was my last question I'd like to ask. You now have, I've sent to you the website to apply for the funding. When it comes, we're not sure. We have, I believe, until the end of this month to make that application. Have we done that yet?
We have filled out the application, we just need your signature
Okay.
on it, but it needs to be electronic signature.
Okay, so let's coordinate that in the next day or so, and we'll go ahead and get that submittal in, and that'll lock everything in motion. And then we'll just have to find out what we can and cannot spend that money on, okay? Okay, good discussion. Thank you, council. Anything else before we move on?
Just to clarify on the application, is that the original funding or is that for the match funding?
No, the match funding decision has not only that the legislators has put $50 million into the pot.
No date for that?
Right, but the application to apply for the American Rescue Plan funding has to be done between now and the end of the month. And it sounds like, Camille, you've got that basically ready for us, so we're ready to go ahead and just put the signature on it and get that submitted to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. Okay, perfect, thank you. City Manager report.
Okay, I do have a little bit to go over, so bear with me. The railroad property down at Public Works has been vacated. A letter was going to be sent to the railroad to do away with their lease. The last time this happened, they came back to us and said, can you take care of it and we'll let you put your stuff there. So we'll see what happens with that.
Quite an exercise to just get it back, Ross. But we'll do it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's been how long, Ross, since we first talked about that?
You came on board.
And it's such a great accomplishment. Thank you so much. That was perfect. Anyway, great. Thank you. Great news.
Wanted to talk about the fireworks over the weekend. We did have 5 fire calls, 3 of which was about fireworks. 2 were really complaints about the way they were shooting them off. The other one came in as a fire, dispatched out to the fire. There was no fire there, so they got called off. The other 2 fire calls were unrelated to fire. The police department reported that they didn't have any complaints, nor do they go on the fire calls because they were legal, the firework calls because they're legal to shoot off. But they didn't have any complaints. It was actually a slower weekend, which is very good, so.
Kudos to police and fire for keeping things safe.
Yeah, one thing that they did this year that was very good is going in those zones that were prohibited and talking to people that were trying to light off in those zones. That was very effective on their part.
Thank you, Chief. Perfect.
Wanted to report the I-15 Express Lane. They're planning on having all the lanes open at the end of the year. By November is what they said. They're not done with the construction. There might be some milling and different things going on up there, but all lanes of traffic should be open. Follow-up item from last council meeting, the splash pad. At the very low end of running the splash pad, we use about 100 gallons per minute. The high rate would be at 220 if all systems were running at the splash pad. The engineer says that about 30,000 gallons per day if it's ran all day long. That's what it's engineered to
What does
take.
the average household in Roy use a month?
About,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot because I had to look at my bill, but I don't.
about 9,000.
Average house uses 9,000 a month, and we're blowing through 30,000 a day. Ooh.
Weren't we gonna talk about limiting the hours?
Yeah, if we wanted to limit the hours, it has not been done,
Yeah.
but we could limit the hours there.
I think we should do that for sure.
What do you want to do, council?
I think like 11 to 7.
It's kind of what I was thinking.
But say
Yeah.
the current hours right now, please.
9 to
Yeah, 9 to
8 or
8.
something.
9 to 8.
9 to 8.
I'd even go noon to 7. That's 7 hours.
People like to go get wet before they eat lunch, though,
Yeah, that's what I was
Brian.
gonna say.
Really?
I've driven over there before I
Lunch
called
and-
back to the office, but there were people over there at 11 o'clock. They'd go play and then they'd go eat their lunch, so.
I think 9's too early. I think if they know that.
11 to
that-
7, that's cutting 3 hours a day off.
Right.
If you do cut it out in the morning and it's not as popular to be there, it's not gonna save you as much gallons if it's not being utilized.
Right.
So by doing something, is it really gonna be effective is what I'm getting at.
It may
I
look,
put
it
something in
looks on
place that
paper, but
doesn't
may not
have the
give you the
desired
reduction.
outcome.
Right.
Exactly. And we could think about it. It's not anything that we're pushing, but I just wanted to report back on those numbers.
The bonus that you have by doing it is at least you send the message out that we are cognizant of it and are working towards doing something versus just sitting back and doing nothing.
Right.
Do we have any idea on numbers of people that go through, or when you were calculating those gallons per minute, is there like an average time of day where the rate
Yeah,
or
that's
the
what it
usage
could
is
use.
higher?
That's not saying what we are using.
Correct.
Do we have a meter on that, or is it?
It would be incorporated, I'm not sure if we'd have to check if the meter's on that specifically.
Because if we have certain times of day,
'Cause-
you know, and there's a lot of people using 100 gallons or 220 gallons is different than, you know, I don't know where that comes in for
Yeah, 'cause
usage.
there is the bathrooms and stuff there that would most likely
Oh,
be on
it's
the
it's
same
the whole
meter.
park's on the same meter.
So are those motion activated, or do they just
There's
flip off
actually a
and off?
button that you have to push.
Okay.
And then not all features come on at the same time.
Okay.
So they kind of,
So even though we could burn 30,000 gallons an hour, we're probably
30,000.
30,000 a day. I mean, we're probably
Yeah.
far off of
Because
that.
it's engineered to have different stations come on at different times.
What about changing stations, so there's maybe only 1 or 2 stations that can come on?
We could
So that way
coordinate
you'd still have longer times for people to use it, but you wouldn't have as much
cut
water
it back
usage.
by 25%, 50% or whatever.
Oh, so what would you like the city to
Turn
do,
the pressure
council?
down. Drizzle it, don't spray it.
Would you like the city to come back and give you some options, what we can
Yeah,
for our
we could
next city
look at it.
Yeah,
council
could you
meeting?
go over and test it with just a percentage of it coming on? You can put on your swimming suit, Matt, and go over there and bring your kids over
When you
and
said
shit.
that, that's what I was thinking.
You can put your goggles and flippers on and go play in the.
I mean, if there are several buttons, maybe certain buttons are
Activated.
activated. and-
Right.
What would
Yeah,
you like,
we can look at it and come back with some,
are you okay with that for next
Yes,
meeting?
please.
Okay, so let's come back with some recommendations of how we can reduce water source. Okay.
And then also in regards to, if we can get the times of day that's more popular and stuff,
yeah,
thanks.
we'll watch it out.
Okay.
Did you have-
The hot days.
Every year, we do an annual summer party with the employees at the Aquatic Center. We're gonna change things up a little bit this year. The party is actually, we're gonna do a night out at the Aquatic Center to where the employees and the employees' friends and family can come to the Aquatic Center. We're not providing the meal or anything like that. We're gonna do drinks and things, and then we're planning on doing something a little later. We did the breakfast for the employees a couple of months ago. We're planning on doing that for the summer and then doing something in the fall again for the employees. So that will be on July 15th, so you're welcome to come out to that.
Is that at night, you said?
Yeah, yep, at the Aquatic Center.
Okay,
Like 6 o'clock or, that's,
At 5 p.m.
okay.
And then also, park benches have been installed at Emma Russell. We talked a little bit about that last time. Employees are gonna start pouring the other park benches at the other parks. Park cameras, we have one installed at Emma Russell, but we are struggling with a vendor to try to get the cameras in, just like the COVID, any supply
Finding
chain.
help.
Yes, trying to get the cameras in.
Or get the cameras, product, personnel.
Product availability, yeah, is just limited. But we are making slow progress with that. Waste management, we've gotten a little bit of feedback from residents. Usually, when we talk about waste management, it's very positive. I wanted to address some of the concerns from yesterday. One of the concerns is letting residents go out and pick their own vendor. Typically speaking, West Haven just did this. They went out to RFP for a vendor 2 years ago or last year. You could pick your own vendor. Usually when you can pick your own vendor, the price goes up by about 40% because that vendor is not able to catch every single house.
Yeah, it's the law of averages. The more dumpster, or the more cans you have, the cheaper they can get it.
Yeah, and so by doing that, they decrease their fees by about 42%. Typically, on average, it's about a 40% decrease. That's one of the benefits of contracting. Every once in a while, citizens will experience missing cans. Oftentimes, the cans can slip through the truck's claws and go in the truck. It's a major safety concern for them to go after those cans. Those cans are also waste management cans. They're not Roy City cans. And so when they do get disposed of, Waste Management is paying that bill. And then also another concern was the missing days. Waste Management, just like almost everybody else out there, is having employee issues. CDL drivers, you have to have a CDL to drive those trucks. However, Roy has not experienced that turnover as other cities have, but they have had turnover. I would just say that if we do miss days or anything like that, please call the city, and we can come out and fix the problem. Another thing is with those missing cans, sorry to backtrack, there's concerns about the delay of getting out there. I can talk to Waste Management about seeing if we can hurry that up or not, but usually you call the city and they'll bring out a new can.
Well, by and large, they've been a pretty good vendor. I mean, they do us a good service with the trash, but they also help out and sponsor activities and that
Yeah,
throughout the city. Easter egg hunt, I think they do some things with Roy Days. So,
Yes.
I mean, overall, they've been a good vendor.
The Halloween, they did the Halloween?
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you do me one favor? Just to make this help, Morgan, I think it'd be beneficial if you have a city phone number that would be a point where people can call in and says, I got a problem with my trash, solid waste. Let's put that on the web, make sure it's clear out there who to call.
Yeah, we prefer them to call us, and then we contact Waste
And then we
Management.
can reach
So
out to the
774-1000.
I think having us do that, I agree with Matt or I or somebody's staff do that. It's our contract. And we have a lot more influence in terms of the outcome than letting a resident try to make that call or try to fight that battle, because I think we're in a much better position to be able to deal with that. So it would help us, Morgan, by getting the message out on our social media sites, and then particularly who is the contact point in Roy City and that phone number, okay?
And I want to echo what Councilmember Paul was talking about. Is in my experience with Waste Management, it's always very positive.
15th is
And anytime there is concerns like this, I address it with them, that they try to resolve it.
Right.
Which is very positive. They also try to be, like Councilmember Paul said, involved in our community. They put a lot of emphasis in that with the Easter egg hunt. That was a $3,000 donation that the city didn't have to pay for that. And then also with Roy Days, they like to sponsor the different events. So they like to be involved, so.
Perfect.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is in the calendar of events in the Connection magazine, The Miss Roy was on a different date. It's actually, so it is on July 17th at 7 PM at the high school. Just wanted to make mention of that too.
Right.
So that is not this weekend, it's the following weekend.
Please come.
Please come.
And
Okay.
it's gonna be where, in the little auditorium now?
Either the big or the little, we're
It's
still,
not gonna be in the big,
and it will have to be in the little.
yeah. I just talked to Matt about it the other day.
Okay.
The other Matt.
Okay,
Other Matt,
perfect.
The principal, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Anything else, council? Do you have any
Yeah,
things?
I
Go ahead,
have
Brian.
something. I know you're busy, but is there a way that we can contact UDOT and have them put a Roy marker sign somewhere along I-84?
Because right now, I believe it's just Riverdale, right?
It is.
Yeah,
I can add yeah, we can definitely talk to him about that.
Okay,
Mayor and I usually have a quarterly meeting that we could bring that up.
thank
at.
you.
I wish they wouldn't have changed the Roy sign to 5600. I wish they would.
Yeah, that's interesting. Over the years, we've not had a sign, but it's getting better. Okay, so a Roy sign on highway or freeway, Interstate 84, right?
Right.
I think
Well,
one of their issues might be is that Roy doesn't have its own exit, it's going to Riverdale Road. But often,
But
yeah, I don't know their
Roy is
parameters for that,
15 feet about
from that exit,
from that exit.
yeah.
So,
We'll find the answer to that. It's a
All
good
right.
point.
thanks.
Anything else, council? Any
Well, I was just
thoughts?
wondering about the red striping at the Roy West Park.
Yes, I've been looking at the policy about the striping. We do have the numbers of how long that is. I didn't write that down. One of my issues with the policy is when I'm driving around the city, it's very inconsistent. When you're on 4800, there's red curb, and then on 6000, there's not. On 5600, there is in places. And then if we say something about a park, the inconsistency with like George Wallen Park versus Roy West Park, because we all agreed in the last council meeting that there was some concerns about having both sides not red at Roy West, but that's not the case for George Wallen, or it's not the case for Emma Russell. So there's a lot of inconsistencies throughout the city. So I'm struggling for a policy to say, how do we identify exactly what we want if there's so many different variances of that? So
But
that's
without
where-
policy and clear direction, pick any plan it'll do, and that I think is part of the problem. That inconsistency is just not consistent. So we have one thing over here and something else over there. So maybe the action we're going to have to take from this assessment would be as we build a draft policy, it doesn't have to go through the planning commission. We build a draft policy and see if we can't fit all this in here. Because without that policy, we have no direction.
And with that inconsistency, it could be just that we decide here as a body of the council.
Can be.
And that, because to say what the policy would be would change quite a bit and have repercussions, or we could deal with the particular situation and decide as a body to do away with that one. So,
Or you just, but to me, the existing city council issue comes up, city council on that situation makes a decision. And that becomes the policy. But we need that kind of policy. Interesting enough, new city council
Is
comes
the
in,
policy.
they don't like that decision the previous one did, they change it. That's the policy. So you have to kind of think about how you want to approach this. So we'll take a shot at it. It's an action item, but we'll take a shot at trying to come up with something, but it may be pretty simple. But I think we just need to have some consistency if we can, if it's possible, only because, we get a lot of complaints. I've got a lot of complaints on both sides of this issue. People that don't want them and people that says we have to have them. And I can't find a policy that tells me either way.
I wanted just to jump in regards to the Roy Water Conservancy. I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Banks and a tour, and they are having some, fines that they're having to do. And I just wanted to have us remember that discussing it amongst people and our neighbors is better than the concept of just trying to report people. Some of the things I've been finding is that at the beginning of the year, they had certain policies, like if you had a new sod or this or whatever, the rules were a little bit different, but then later on, those rules changed, so there are no exceptions. But a lot of people didn't see that follow-up. Now, in our Roy Connection, we do have that clarified, which is nice. But instead of turning it into kind of an offensive, defensive sort of thing, do it as an education thing amongst our neighbors. Don't do it as a, oh, here's your form, let's report you. Because that doesn't, I don't believe, really benefit anyone when some of the policy has changed from the very beginning of the year. So I think if we can, as council and as citizens and neighbors, just remember that, look at the connection, it's got all of the details now, and go first for encouraging and education before, punitive measures are approached.
A great comment, and and I will indicate to you, I wasn't too excited to be personally, Diane, when I seen the state also has a website, and you can basically not only tell on people at a state level, you can tell both the problem as well as the benefit if they're doing it right. I guess that's interesting, but I would almost think that most people will use that as an opportunity to use a stick versus some type of candy. So I agree. If we can talk to our neighbors, that's the right answer.
I spoke to all my neighbors that were watering in the middle of the day, and when I stopped and talked to them, they said they had no clue, and
Yeah.
and I can tell they're complying because their lawns are getting browner.
So is all the city parks.
I know.
And
it
that's
makes
another
me
thing.
sad.
Some people get really upset because some lawns are green, but there are different types of grass that actually do well with the heat. So educate without maybe judging right away, because sometimes you don't know all those things.
Right, and
but-
I'm glad they put the, water less but longer duration each setting, because that's what's worked for my lawn. I still have one side that's always dead, but
Yeah.
And the Extension Service is really recommending that you need to think about your trees. So let the lawn go, but a lot of those trees are having problems, and having trees and shade actually helps your lawn. So keep that in mind as
and
we're
that's the
talking to
trees
people.
for the parks and like in front of Roy Rec and all those trees. I just hope that, 'cause that's what my worry is.
Well, the
I mean,
other
I've
thing
been
too
soaking
is-
my trees, but
The other thing too is evaluate your sprinklers. I've went over the last month and replaced all the nozzles on all my sprinklers because I noticed most of them were high angle sprinklers, and it's throwing the water into the air, and we've had so much wind lately, it's blowing it away. So I changed all my nozzles to low angle, and so it shoots lower to the ground and it's not being blown away, and it's actually helped me keep my grass greener because
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much water I was throwing to the wind.
a lot of trees are dying because watering twice a week just with a sprinkler for a half hour, that's not enough water for trees. And I hate to see all the trees in the city die. That's a big expense to replace them all in them parks, and so.
Yeah. Oh, great comments. Appreciate that. Obviously, Matt and I were talking about this today. We've got to watch and see what happens this winter.
Pray for snow.
You may very well see an ordinance presented to you to do a little bit more if we have to in terms of addressing culinary water usage. If we find that the water, the snowpack is not there, it could get kind of interesting. So just be aware. But thanks, a great comment. We got to work through this together, not beat each other up.
And we still have plenty of culinary water? We're still-
But again.
But I've heard the aquifers fall behind a year or so. So even though they're in a drought with the lakes and that the aquifers aren't too far behind of potentially running low on water. I don't know. Do you know more?
Yeah.
Well, I told the mayor I think that West Haven should use all their money to dig wells so they don't have to keep buying our water.
And we can always cut them off.
Let's see, don't make that public. Okay. Hey, great comments. Anything else you'd like to share before we ask Ann to talk about Roy Days?
We tried it. We got shot down.
Oh,
Okay, so let's talk about Roy Days. It's coming at us, and a couple of things. What can you tell us about the fish fry?
well, I know it's at Emma Russell Park this year on a Thursday night, along with the movie, We Are Marshall. And we didn't want to take away from all the booths on a Friday night because it was limited and
they'd done a lot of work and,
Okay.
and told all the vendors that there wouldn't be a fish fry, so anyway, they're gonna have it at, Emma Russell Park, and tickets are available now. Have they sold very many of those, Matt, do you know?
I haven't heard. Have you seen that in the? Okay.
Okay,
Well, that
Parks
goes
and
through
Rec
the
are handling that.
recreation.
Okay. Let's talk just briefly about the parade. What do you expect the council to be involved in the parade?
I want to tell you something that I found out this week. I ran into the mayor of Clearfield, and I'm like, I know you. He goes, I know you. And I'm like, aren't you the mayor of Clearfield? So anyway, it was their parade the next day. And he told me that they do a float, and they were going to do Men in Black. And they're all the council and the mayor, and then they're having the Clearfield marching group march behind to that song, the Men in Black song. And then he said, I'm going to get down and dance too. I'm like, I should have gone and watched that, but I didn't. And so I was telling Matt about it, and he said, oh, we do a theme and a float every year. And I'm like, oh, maybe we'll have to look into that, doing something like that next year, as long as we don't have to get down and dance. So, but anyway, because we're all just supposed to drive our own little individual cars.
So in the parade, we're bringing our own cars?
No,
Well, I
we'll be
mean,
getting
or
'em
get them from Larry H. Miller if he
yeah.
has any available.
Are they providing drivers again, or do we find our own drivers?
It would be up to you.
Yeah.
If you want us to drive them, we can.
Okay, so,
Ross, I want you to drive me.
so there is an invitation to be part of a parade, is that correct?
And I heard him say that they had the biggest parade they've ever had, and they had 72, entries. And what
Entries.
did you say, Matt? It's our smallest, and it was 100 and 105?
Usually over 100, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big event. Okay, so council, be ready. You need to be in the parade, okay? Obviously, West Park is heavy in terms of everything else. What about the art show?
The art shows
Yeah.
at the library,
But is the council judging?
I believe so. I don't think I've had.
Could you give us
I've
They've
confirmation?
never said anything to
I've
me
heard
about that,
nothing,
but
no changes there, yeah, so
Okay, and then there's also,
shoot out some information on that.
yeah, so help us with in terms of whether the art show at the library is going to require the council to judge.
I can find that out.
And then if you would, also, there is a car show at West Park. Does the council judge an entries into the car show?
I would like to be involved with that,
Typically
but
do, yes.
We've done over the
I was involved in Roy
years.
Days, 'cause we didn't have it last year, and then I wasn't in the council the year
Okay,
before, so.
so can you help us on four things? Make
Yeah.
sure we understand the fish fry. We do have involvement with the parade. If you want to bring your own, I got access to a classic car, so, but if
Me
not,
too.
looks like Larry H. Miller will be helping us again
I
this year.
think you have, your car's pretty cool, so,
I'll bet this old Ford T is, it's got a convertible, so it makes it really
Yeah.
fun. Art judge, so find out if we're going to be making any judgments on the art, and then if you help us,
and the
last
car
one
show too, huh?
would be the car show. Each
I'll
one of
find out.
those in the past has required specifically city council involvement.
And then
okay?
on the salmon bake, I'll find out how many tickets, it says, to let them know how many tickets. Is that just you and a partner, or is that your family, or?
I'll let you guys work all that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
well,
know what that is
But,
either.
but those are really things that the council needs to be part of, okay? So please consider being there. The other things are a lot of fun, the shows, the games, all the other stuff, but those are the big things that the council really needs to be part of if you can. Council, anything else that we need to talk about you'd like to share?
I'd just like to say thanks again to our public safety, police and fire for keeping us safe during the 4th. I know the council come under a lot of fire to ban fireworks. I think in council with our fire chief, we made the right decision to just educate the people, restrict it in certain areas. It panned out. We got one more big holiday to get through on the 24th, and hopefully that goes well, but I have faith that you guys will keep doing it, and you did a great job, so I appreciate it.
When's the last day they can shoot off fireworks?
27.
Yesterday?
Yesterday was the last day,
For the
Okay.
4th of July.
and then we'll have a 2-day gap for the 24th.
And is there a time they're supposed to quit doing that too?
We'll post that out, we'll start getting a campaign on that one as
Yeah, your neighbors that were firing them off last night probably
Right,
weren't supposed
my
to.
neighbors were, so.
Yeah, Chief, yeah, keep us posted on that. I think as it was indicated, and it's important to recognize, we did get a lot of, and you've seen some of the traffic, get a lot of people's comments relative whether Roy City should have shut down or not. Matt and I had a couple of conversations, Andy and I, there were some issues in the public law. I am going to hope that that the clarifications on what the city and city council can and cannot do dealing with fireworks will be addressed in the next legislators, because it's my opinion, no mayor in Utah has the authority, okay, to cancel that. In fact, no fire department chief has the authority to do that. The legislative body is the only authority that has the authority to cancel fireworks in a city. Some cities caught that message. There were a lot of cities that didn't, and I think that's an embarrassment that we didn't know differently. So I think you'll see some solutions, hopefully in the next legislation, to clarify exactly what we can and cannot do when it comes to fireworks, particularly dealing with the drought issues. Anything else, Council, you'd like to see done? Anything you say that, man, I'm just getting complaints about, you'd like to see fixed? This is the body. The power of getting things done rests with this body. It doesn't rest with the individual.
Are we still gonna have street sweeping come and clean our city? Sweep in Utah?
We would have to do an RFP and then award a contract, but we are planning to do a contract with somebody, yes.
And I just wanted to let you know that we're not the only city that has vandalized bathrooms. Like Matt says,
Yes,
Kaysville, and then my
Kaysville,
daughter
Having a really hard time.
in-law went to take my granddaughter to the bathroom in South Ogden, and it was closed because of kids' vandalism. So it's known throughout the whole area.
See something, say something.
Right, yeah.
If the
Everybody ought to keep an eye out.
Yeah, if the city does two big things, and that's where they're moving right now. One is get cameras on and get electric locks. I think we can curb this, but we've got to have those installed. We've got to get those in play, and I think once we do that, I think we can get our arms around this better. Otherwise, we're just going to be vulnerable. Okay, anything else, Council? Okay, with that
My
then.
favorite motion.
Okay, I have a motion then to adjourn,
I'll second it.
and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, thank you, we're adjourned. Thank you for being here, a lot of conversation, great information.